Shalom, shalom, everybody. How y'all doing? Welcome back. Welcome back to Reading with Shilo with Shilo. And I hope all y'all are well today. We about to get it in with the last two chapters of Mr. Gary Chapman's book, The Five Love Languages. Words of affirmation, acts of service, receiving gifts, quality time, and physical touch. Physical touch. So we are on chapter 12. We have chapter 12 and chapter 13, which are the last chapters that we have to read. Loving the unlovely. That's going to be chapter 12. So it's going to be I don't want to say a long one. We'll see. We shall see if I read all this stuff. But for sure, we're going to read chapter 12 and 13 and get them out the way. It's chapter 12, chapter 13, and it is, I want to say, 15 frequently asked questions. And I think that's what's going to take up most of the reading, is the 15 frequently asked questions. But we'll go ahead and get through it, man. We'll go ahead and push through. Push through. Push through. The five love languages. The five love languages. Cold water chick. All right. Let's see what we can learn and grow from Mr. Gary Chapman, if anything at all. You know, I don't know what y'all have thought about this book, or if many of y'all have read it or not, but you know, I've been putting off reading this book, and we have suffered through it. No, no, we pushed through it, and a lot of stuff is common sense to me, but you know, I don't think being just trying to read stuff, you know, it I can read it, but I don't know if this would be something that I would go looking for. You know, for me, this wouldn't be my kind of book, you know. And I don't know if that says something about me, because I wouldn't go searching for a book called The Five Love Languages. I think it's more new school approach to things than old school, so to speak, I guess. But you know, hey, let's keep reading and see what we can learn and grow from. Maybe there's something we can use in future times, not just dealing with, you know, let's say sexual partner or wife, but maybe a family member, brother or sister, children. And I heard they have a book for children. So, but yeah, let's get into chapter 12. Loving the unlovely. It was a beautiful September Saturday. My wife and I were strolling through Arnaldo Gardens, enjoying the flora, some of which had been imported from around the world. The gardens had originally been developed by R.J. Reynolds, the tobacco magnate, as a part of his country estate. They are now a part of the Wake Forest University campus. We had just passed the Rose Garden when I noticed Anne, a woman who had begun counseling 2 weeks earlier. approaching us. She was looking down at the cobblestone walkway and appeared to be in deep thought. When I greeted her, she was startled but looked up and smiled. I introduced her to Carol, and we exchanged pleasantries. Then, without a lead in, she asked me one of the most profound questions I had ever heard. Dr. Chapman, is it possible to love someone whom you hate? I knew the question was born of deep hurt and deserved a thoughtful answer. I knew that I would be seeing her a following week for another counseling appointment. So I said, and that is one of the most thought provoking questions I have ever heard. Why don't we discuss this next week? She agreed, and Carol and I continued our stroll. But Anne's question did not go away. Later, as we drove home, Carol and I discussed it. We reflected on the earlier days of our own marriage and remembered that we had often expressed feelings of hate. Our condemning words to each other had brought us hurt, and on the heels of hurt, anger. The anger held inside becomes hate. We made the difference for us. What made the difference for us? We both knew it was the choice to love. We had realized that if we continued our pattern of demanding and condemning, we would destroy our marriage. Fortunately, over a period of about a week, we had learned how to discuss our differences without condemning each other, how to make decisions without destroying our unity, how to give constructive suggestions without being demanding, and eventually how to speak to each other. Our choice to love was made in the midst of negative feelings toward each other. When we started speaking each other's primary love language, the feelings of anger and hate abated. Our situation, however, was different from Anne's. Carol and I had both been open to learning and growing. I knew that Anne's husband was not. She had told me the previous week that she had begged him to go for counseling. She had pleaded for him to read a book or listen to a speaker on marriage, but he had refused all her efforts toward growth. According to her, his attitude was, I don't have any problems. You are the one with the problems. In his mind, he was right and she was wrong. It was as simple as that. Her feelings of love for him had been killed through the years by his constant criticism and condemnation. After 10 years of marriage, her emotional energy was depleted and her self-esteem almost destroyed. Was there hope for Anne's marriage? Could she love an unlovely husband? Would he ever respond in love to her? Love's greatest challenge. I knew that Anne was a deeply religious person and that she attended church regularly. I surmised that perhaps her only hope that marital survival was in her faith. The next day, with Anne in mind, I began to read Luke's account of the life of Christ. I have always admired Luke's writing because he was a physician who gave attention to details and in the first century wrote an orderly account of the teachings of and lifestyle of Jesus of Nazareth. In what was having I'm tripping. In what many have called Jesus' greatest sermon, I read the following words, which I call love's greatest challenge. But to you who are listening, I say, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who mistreat you. Do to others as you would have them do to you. If you have those who love you, what credit is it to you? Even sinners love those who love them. It seemed to me that profound challenge, written almost 2,000 years ago, might be the direction that Anne was looking for, but could she do it? Could anyone do it? Is it possible to love a spouse who has become your enemy? Is it possible to love one who has cursed you, mistreated you, and expressed feelings of contempt and hate for you. Sometimes that's your parents. If she could, would there be any payback? Would her husband ever change and begin to express love and care for her? I was astounded, but by this further word from Jesus' sermon, give and it will be given to you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Could that principle of loving an unlovely person possibly work in the marriage as far gone as Anne's? I decided to do an experiment. I would take as my hypothesis that if Anne could learn her husband's primary love language and speak it for a period of time so that his emotional need for love was met, eventually he would reciprocate and begin to express love to her. I wondered, would it work? I met with Anne the next week and listened again as she reviewed the hurts in her marriage. At the end of her synopsis, she repeated the question she had asked in Ronaldo Gardens. This time she put it in the form of a statement. Dr. Chapman, I just don't know if I can ever love him again after all he has done to me. Have you talked about your situation with any of your friends? I asked. With two of my closer friends, she said, and a little bit with some other people. And what was their response? Get out, she said. Get out. Get out. I bet they sing it. They all tell me to get out, that he will never change, and that I am simply prolonging the agony. But I just can't bring myself to do that. Maybe I should, but I just can't believe that that's the right thing to do. It seems to me that you are torn between your religious and moral beliefs that tell you it is wrong to get out of the marriage, and your emotional pain, which tells you that getting out is the only way to survive, I say. That's exactly right, Dr. Chapman. That's exactly the way I feel. I don't know what to do. I am deeply sympathetic with the struggle. I continue. You are in a very difficult situation. I wish I could offer you an easy answer, but unfortunately, I can't. Both of the alternatives you mentioned, getting out and staying in, will likely bring you a great deal of pain. Before you make that decision, I do have one idea. I'm not sure it will work, but I'd like you to try. I know from what you have told me that your religious faith is important to you and that you have a great deal of respect for the teachings of Jesus. She nodded, and I continued. I want to read something that Jesus once said that I think had some application to your marriage. I read slowly and deliberately. But to you who are listening, I say, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. Do to others as you would have them do to you. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. Does that sound like your husband? Has he treated you as an enemy rather than as a friend? She paused. Yes, she said quietly. Has he ever cursed you? I asked. Many times. Has he ever mistreated you? Often. And has he told you that he hates you? Yes. The 6-month experiment. And if you are willing, I would like to do an experiment. I would like to see what would happen if we apply this principle to your marriage. Let me explain what I mean. I want I went on to explain to Anne the concept of the emotional tank and the fact that when the tank is low, as hers was, we have no love feelings towards our spouse, but simply experience emptiness and pain. I told her that if we could learn to speak each other's primary love language, that emotional need could be met and positive feelings could grow again. Does that make sense to you? I inquired. Dr. Chapman, you have just described my life. I have never seen it so clearly before. We were in love before we got married, but not long after our marriage, we came down off of the high and we never learned to speak each other's love language. My tank has been empty for years, and I'm sure his has also, Dr. Chapman. If I had understood this concept earlier, maybe none of this would have happened. We can't go back, Anne, I said. All we can do is try to make the future different. I like that one. Common sense. I would like to propose a 6-month experiment. I'll try anything, Anne said. I liked her positive spirit, but I wasn't sure whether she understood how difficult the experiment would be. Let's begin by stating our objective, I said. If in 6 months you could have your own fondest wish, what would it be? Anne sat in silence for some time. Then thoughtfully she said, I would like to see us doing things together, going places together. I would like to feel that he is interested in my world. I would like him to listen to me. I'd like to feel that he values my ideas. I'd like to see us taking trips together and having fun again. I would like to know that he values our marriage more than anything. Anne paused and then continued. On my part, I would like to have warm, positive feelings towards him again. I would like to go, I would like to gain respect for him again. I would like to be proud of him. Right now, I don't have those feelings. I was writing as Anne was speaking. When she finished, I read aloud what she had said. That sounds like a pretty lofty objective, I said. But is that really what you want, Anne? More than anything, then let's agree, I said, that this will be our objective. In 6 months, we want to see and Glenn have this kind of love relationship. Now, let me suggest a hypothesis. Let's hypothesize that if you could speak Glenn's primary love language consistently for a 6 months period, that somewhere along the line his emotional need for love would begin to be met. And as his emotional tank filled, he would begin to reciprocate love to you. I continue. You understand that this places all the intention in your hands. Glenn is not trying to work on this marriage. You are. But if you can channel your energies in the right direction, there is a good possibility that Glenn will eventually reciprocate. I read the other position of Jesus' sermon recorded by Luke, the physician. Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Generally speaking, if we are kind and loving toward people, they will tend to be kind and loving towards us. That does not mean that we can make a person kind by being kind to him. We are independent agents. Thus, we can spurn love and walk away from love or even spit into the face of love. There is no guarantee that Glenn will respond to your acts of love. We can only see that there is a good possibility he will do so. I want to be a better wife to you. I want to be a better wife to you. When they discuss Anne and Glenn's primary love language, I guessed hers was quality time, and Anne confirmed it. In our earlier days, we spent long hours together talking, doing things together. I really felt loved. More than anything, I wish that part of our marriage could return. When we spend time together, I feel like he really cares. But when he's always doing other things, I feel like business and other pursuits are more important than our relationship. And what do you think Glenn's primary love language is? I inquired. I think it is physical touch, and especially the sexual part of the marriage. I know that when I felt more loved by him, we were more sexually active. He had a different attitude. I think that's his primary love language. Does he ever complain about the way you talk to him? Well, he says I nag him all the time. He also says I don't support him, that I'm always against his ideas. Then let's assume, I said, that physical touch is his primary love language, and words of affirmation is his secondary love language. The reason I suggest the second is that if he complains about negative words, apparently positive words would be meaningful to him. Now, what if you go home and say, Glenn, I've been thinking about us, and I've decided that I would like to be a better wife to you. So if you have any suggestions, I want you to know that I'm open to them. You can tell me now, or you can think about it and let me know what you think. But I would really like to work on this. Whatever his response, negative or positive, simply accept it as information. Whatever his response, negative or positive, simply accept it as information. That initial statement lets him know that something different is about to happen in our relationship. Then, based upon your guess that his primary love language is physical touch, and my suggestion that his secondary love language may be words of affirmation, focus your attention on those two areas for 1 month. If Glenn comes back with a suggestion as to how you might be a better wife, accept that information and work it into your plan. Look for positive things in Glenn's life and give him verbal affirmation about those things. In the meantime, stop all verbal complaints. If you want to complain about something, write it down in your personal notebook rather than saying anything about it to Glenn this month. Begin taking more initiative in physical touch and sexual involvement. Man. Begin taking more initiative in physical touch and sexual involvement. Surprise him by being aggressive, not simply responding to his advances. Set a goal to have sexual intercourse at least once a week with the at least once a week, man. Come on, man. At least once a week. Now, once a week. I guess that's a start. That's better than nothing. Shit, nothing. Damn, better than nothing. Damn. If he got a once a week, damn. Oh Lord. Anne had told him. Let me go back. Shit. That once a week threw me. Once a week. Woo, woo. Set a goal to have sexual intercourse at least once a week the first 2 weeks and twice a week the following 2 weeks. Anne had told me that she and Glenn had had sexual intercourse only once or twice in the past 6 months. I figured this plan would get things off the dead center rather quickly. Oh, Dr. Chapman, that's going to be difficult, Anne said. I have found it hard to be sexually responsive to him when he ignores me all the time. I have felt used rather than loved in our sexual encounters. He acts as though I am totally unimportant all the rest of the time. And then he wants to jump in bed and use my body? Yeah. Your response has been natural and normal. I assure Anne, usually, if a wife feels loved by her husband, she will desire sexual intimacy. If she does not, she will likely feel used in the sexual context. This is why loving someone who is not loving you is extremely difficult. It goes against our natural tendencies. You will probably have to you will probably have to really to rely, heavily upon your faith in God in order to do this. Perhaps it will help him to read again Jesus' sermon on loving your enemies, loving those who hate you, loving those who use you, and then ask God to help you practice the teachings of Jesus. I could tell that Anne was following what I was saying. Her head was nodding ever so slightly. Her eyes told me she had lots of questions. But, Dr. Chapman, isn't it being hypocritical to express love sexually when you have such negative feelings towards a person? Perhaps it would be helpful for us to distinguish between love as a feeling and love as an action, I said. If you claim that to have feelings that you don't have, that is hypocritical, and such false communication is not the way to build intimate relationships. But if you express an act of love that is designed for the other person's benefit or pleasure, it is simply a choice. You are not claiming that the action grows out of deep emotional bonding. You are simply choosing to do something for his benefit. I think that that must be what Jesus meant. Certainly, we do not have warm feelings for people who hate us. That would be abnormal. But we can do loving acts for them. That is simply a choice. We hope that such loving acts will have a positive effect upon their attitudes and behavior and treatment. But at least we have chosen to do something positive for them. The answer seemed to satisfy Anne, at least for the moment. I had a feeling that we would discuss that again. I also had a feeling that if the experiment was going to get off the ground, it would be because of Anne's deep faith in God. After the first month, I said, I want to ask Glenn for feedback on how you're doing. Using your words, using your own words, ask him, Glenn, you remember a few weeks ago when I told you I was going to try to be a better wife? I want to ask how you think I am doing. Whatever Glenn says, accept it as information. Whatever his response, do not argue, but accept it and assure him that you are serious about being a better wife. And if he has additional suggestions, you are open to them. Follow this pattern of asking for feedback once a month for the entire 6 months. Whenever Glenn gives you the first positive response, you will know that your efforts are getting through to him emotionally. 1 week after you receive the first positive feedback, I want you to make a request of Glenn, something that you would like him to do, something in keeping with your primary love language. For example, you may say to him one evening, Glenn, do you know something I would like to do? Do you remember how you used to go take walks in Ronaldo Gardens together? I'd like to do that with you this Thursday night. The kids are going to be staying at my mom's. Do you think that would be possible? Make the request something specific, not general. Don't say, you know, I wish we would spend more time together. That's too vague. How will you know when he's doing it? Oh, excuse me. How will you know when he's done it? But if you make your request specific, he will know exactly what you want, and you will know that when he does it, he is choosing to do something for your benefit. Do this every month. If he does it, fine. If he doesn't do it, fine. But when he does it, you will know that he is responding to your needs. In the process, you are teaching him your primary love language because the requests you make are in keeping with your love language. If he chooses to begin loving you in your primary love language, Your positive emotions towards him will begin to resurface. Your emotional tank will begin to fill up. And in time, the marriage will, in fact, be reborn. Dr. Chapman, I would do anything if that could happen, Anne said. Well, I responded. It will take a lot of hard work, but I believe it's worth the try. I'm personally interested to see if this experiment works and if our hypothesis is true. I would like to meet you. I would like to meet with you regularly throughout this process, perhaps every 2 weeks. I wonder if she got to pay for this. I wonder if she got to pay for this because this seemed like a ploy to make more money. You know, if I was meeting with you once a month, once every 2 months, something like that, and then now you want to meet me every 2 weeks. I give them every 2 weeks for free. Oh, that's coming out of my pocket. See the way my bank account is set up. Shit. Perhaps every 2 weeks. And I would like to keep records on the positive words of affirmation that you give Glenn each week. Also, I would like you to bring me your list of complaints that you have written in your notebook without stating them to Glenn. Perhaps from the felt complaints, I can help you build specific requests for Glenn that will help meet some of those frustrations. Eventually, I want you to learn how to share your frustrations and irritations in a constructive way. I want you and Glenn to learn how to work through those irritations and conflicts. But during this 6 weeks, 6 month experiment, I want you to write them down without telling Glenn. Anne left, and I believe that she had the answer to her questions. Is it possible to love someone whom you hate? In the next 6 months, Anne saw a tremendous change in Glenn's attitude and treatment of her. The first month, he treated the whole thing lightly. But after the second month, he gave her positive feedback about her efforts. In the last 4 months, he responded positively to almost all of her requests, and her feelings for him began to change drastically. Glenn never came for counseling, but he did listen to some of my CDs and discuss them with Anne. He encouraged Anne to continue her counseling, which she did for another 3 months after our experiment. To this day, Glenn swears to his friends that I am a miracle worker. I know, in fact, that love is a miracle worker. Perhaps you need a miracle in your own marriage. Why not try Anne's experiment? Tell your spouse that you have been thinking about your marriage and have decided that you would like to do a better job at meeting his or her needs. Ask for suggestions on how you can improve. His suggestions will be a clue to his primary love language. If he makes no suggestions, guess his love language based on the things he had complained about over the years. Then, for 6 months, focus your attention on that love language. At the end of each month, ask your spouse for feedback on how you're doing and for further suggestions. Whenever your spouse indicates that he is seeing improvement, wait 1 week and then make a specific request. That request should be something that you really want him to do for you. If he chooses to do it, you will know that he is responding to your needs. If he does not honor your request, continue to love him. Maybe next month he will respond positively. If your spouse starts speaking your love language by responding to your requests, your positive emotion towards him will return. And in time, your marriage will be reborn. I cannot guarantee the results, but scores of people whom I have counseled have experienced the miracle of love. If your marriage is in a serious trouble discussed in this chapter, you need to begin by making a strong commitment of the will to undertake the following experiment. You risk further pain and rejection, but you also stand to regain a healthy and fulfilling marriage. Count the cost. It's worth the attempt. Number one, ask how you can be a better spouse. And regardless of the other's attitude, act on what he or she tells you. Continue to be to continue to both seek more input and comply with those wishes with all your heart and will. Assure your spouse that your motives are pure. Number two, when you receive positive feedback, you know there's progress. Each month, make one non-threatening but specific request that is easy for your spouse. Make sure it relates to your primary love language and will help replenish your empty tank. Number three, when your spouse responds and meets your need, you will be able to react with not only your will but your emotions as well. Without overreacting, continue positive feedback and affirmation of your spouse at these times. Ooh wee, ooh wee. Sleep monster just hit me, bust me up. Number four, as your marriage begins to truly heal and grow deeper, make sure you don't rest on your laurels and forget your spouse's love language and daily needs. You're on the road to your dreams, so stay there. Put appointments into your schedule and assess together how you're doing. That was chapter 12. Loving the unlovely. Chapter 13, which is a short chapter. It's only like 3 pages. Yeah, 3 pages. A personal word. This is the last chapter, but we'll see, man. We'll see. We might go on to the frequently asked questions. I'm not too sure right now. But for right now, let's get chapter 13. What I am sure about. Chapter 13, a personal word. A personal word. My bad. Got some humbug in my water. Chapter 13, a personal word. Well, what do you think? Having read these pages, walked in and out of the lives of several couples, visited small villages and large cities, sat with me in the counseling office, and talked with people in restaurants, what do you think? Could these concepts radically alter the emotional climate of your marriage? What would happen if you discovered the primary love language of your spouse and chose to speak it constantly? Neither you nor I can answer that question until you have tried it. I know that many couples have heard this concept at my marriage seminars say that choosing to love and expressing it in the primary love language of their spouses has made a drastic difference in their marriage. When the emotional need for love is met, it creates a climate where the couple can deal with the rest of life in a much more productive manner. Consider Mark and Robin. Robin figured out that Mark's primary love language was affirming words, usually involving something specific. I like how you're protective of me. It makes me feel loved. It greatly helps me understand him, she said. Now that's not to imply that I always say the right thing, but simply knowing how he's wired has drawn us closer. Robin says her love language is acts of service. Mark would compliment me about something because that's his love language. And somehow it never made me feel all that great. But when we figured out that what I really valued were acts of service, even something small like bringing me coffee in bed in the morning, our marriage took a giant step. We each come to marriage with a different personality and history. We bring emotional baggage into our marriage relationship. We come with different expectations, different ways of approaching things, and different opinions about what matters in life. In a healthy marriage, that variety of perspectives must be perceived. We need not argue on everything, but we must find a way to handle our differences so that way we can become divisive. With empty love tanks, couples tend to argue and withdraw. This and come on, wake up, Shilo. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Two more pages. Wake up. Ooh wee. Wake up. With empty love tanks, couples tend to argue and withdraw, and some may tend to be violent verbally and physically within their arguments. But when the love tank is full, we create a climate of friendliness, a climate that seeks to understand, that is willing to allow differences and negotiate problems. I am convinced that no single area of marriage affects the rest of marriage as much as meeting the emotional needs for love. The ability to love, especially when your spouse is not loving you, may seem impossible for some. Such love may require us to draw upon our spiritual resources. A number of years ago, as I faced my own marital struggles, I rediscovered my need for God. As an anthropologist, I had been trained to examine data. I decided that personally excavate the root of the Christian faith, examining the historical accounts of Christ's birth, life, death, and resurrection. I came to view his death as an expression of love and his resurrection as profound evidence of his power. I became a true believer. I committed my life to him, even when love is not reciprocated. I had to think about the word. Reciprocated. My bad. I skipped the whole sentence. I committed my life to him and found that he provides the inner spiritual energy to love, even when love is not reciprocated. I would encourage you to make your own investigation of the one who, as he died, prayed for those who killed him. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. That is love, ultimate expression. That's love's ultimate expression. The high divorce rate in our country bears witness that thousands of married couples have been living with an empty emotional love tank. I believe that the concepts in this book could make a significant impact upon the marriages of and families of our country. I have not written this book as an academic treatise to be stored in the libraries of colleges and universities, although I hope that professors of sociology and psychology will find it helpful in courses on marriage and family life. I have written not to those who are studying marriage, but to those who are married, to those who have expressed that in love euphoria, who entered marriage with lofty dreams of making each other supremely happy, but in the reality of day-to-day life are in danger of losing that dream entirely. It is my hope that thousands of those couples will not only rediscover their dreams, but will see the path to making their dreams come true. I dream of a day when the potential of the married couples in this country can be unleashed for the good of mankind. When husbands and wives can live life with full emotional love tanks and reach out to accomplish their potential as individuals and as couples. I dream of a day. It sounds like I'm reading Martin Luther King. I had a dream. I dream of a day when children can grow up in homes filled with love and security, where children's development energies can be channeled to learning and serving rather than seeking the love they did not receive at home. It is my desire that this brief volume will kindle the flame of love and in your marriage and in the marriages of thousands of other couples like you. I write this for you. I hope it changes your life. And if it does, be sure to give it to someone else. I would be pleased if you would give the copy of this book to your family, to your brothers and sisters, to your married children, to your employees, to those in your civic club and your churches or synagogues. Who knows? Together, we may see our dream come true. Let's see what some of these, I got a little time. Let's see if we can read these. That was chapter 13. A personal word. Frequently asked questions. Number 1, what if I can't discover my primary love language? What if I can't discover my primary love language? What if? Could it be? Is it like finding where's Waldo? I've taken the 5 love languages profile, and my score came out absolutely even except for receiving gifts. I know that my primary love language, I know that's not my primary love language. What should I do? In the book, I discussed 3 approaches to discovering your love language. First, observe how you most often express love to others. If you regularly do acts of service for others, this may be your love language. If you're constantly verbally affirming people, then words of affirmation is likely your love language. Second, consider what you complain about most often. What I might have to do that. I might have to do this. Second, consider what you complain about most often. When you say to your wife, I don't think you'd ever touch me if I didn't initiate it, you're revealing that physical touch is your primary love language. When your wife goes on a shopping trip in the city and you say, you don't bring me anything, you're indicating that receiving gifts is your love language. The statement, we don't ever spend time together, indicates that your love language is quality time. Your complaint reveals your inner desires. If you have difficulty remembering what you complain about most often, ask your wife. She'll know. Third, think of the request you make of your wife most often. If you're saying, will you give me a back rub? You're asking for physical touch. Do you think we could get a weekend away this weekend? Is a request for quality time. Would it be possible for you to clean out your closet this afternoon? Expresses your desire for acts of service. One husband told me that he discovered his love language by simply following the process of elimination. He knew that receiving gifts was not his language, so that left only 4. He asked himself, if I had to give up one of the 4, which one would I give up first? His answer was quality time. Of the 3 remaining, if I had to give up another, which would I give up? He concluded that apart from sexual intercourse, he could give up physical touch. He could get along without the parts of hugs and holding hands. That left acts of service and words of affirmation. While he appreciated the things his wife did for him, he knew that her affirming words were really what gave him life. He could live for a whole day on one positive comment from her. That's how much they meant to him. It was no stretch to conclude that words of affirmation was his primary love language and acts of service was his secondary love language. Number two, what if I can't discover my wife's love language? Oh, might be a problem there, buddy. Ooh, we got a lot of pages. We got a lot of pages. Let's see how far I get. Number two, what if I can't discover my wife's love language? My wife hasn't read this book, but we have discussed love languages. She says she doesn't know what her love language is. My first suggestion is to give your wife a copy of the 5 love languages, The Secrets to Love That Lasts. If she reads it, she'll likely be eager to share her love language with you. However, if she doesn't have time or interest to read the book, I would suggest you answer various variations of the 3 questions discussed in question 1. How does your wife most often express love to others? What does she complain about most often? What does she request of you? Through your wife's complaints may sometimes irritate, though your wife's complaints may sometimes irritate you, they're actually giving you valuable information. If your wife says we don't ever spend any time together, you may be tempted to say, "What do you mean?" When what you ought to, "We went out to dinner Thursday night." Such a defensive statement. I am getting tripped up. I am getting tripped up right now. That's because my eyes is getting low. The sleep is starting to show. I need some pick me up. I don't know what that is. I don't drink the energy drinks. I was hoping that cold water was gonna do something. Nope, I didn't do nothing. How does your wife most often express love to others? What does she complain about most often? What does she request most often? Through your wife's complaints may though your wife I'm messed up. Though your wife's complaints may sometimes irritate you, they're actually giving you valuable information. If your wife says we don't ever spend any time together, you may be tempted to say, "What do you mean? We went out to dinner Thursday night." Such a defensive statement will end the conversation. If on the other hand, you respond, "What would you like for us to do?" You'll likely get a helpful answer. Your wife's complaints are the most powerful indicators of her primary love language. Another approach is to do a 5-week experiment. The first week, you focus on one of the 5 love languages and try to speak it every day. Observe your wife's responses. On Saturday and Sunday, you relax. The second week, Monday through Friday, you're focused on another of the you focus on another of the 5 love languages. Continue the different language with a different language each of the 5 weeks. And on the week you speak your wife's primary love language, you'll likely see a difference in her countenance, and the way she responds to you. It will be obvious that this is her primary love language. Number three. Number three. Does your primary love language change as you get older? Okay, that's a good question, I guess. How the question I would have: how often does a woman's primary love language? I mean, how often does a woman change her love language? Does she change her love? I think it do. I think that love language flip flop depending on the man she with. Does your primary love language change as you get older? I think our primary love language tends to stay with us for a lifetime. It's like many other personality traits that develop early to remain constant. For example, a highly organized person was likely organized as a child. A person who is laid back and relaxed likely had those traits as a child. This is true of numerous personality traits. However, there are certain situations in life that make the other love languages extremely attractive. For example, your primary love language may be words of affirmation. But if you're working two jobs, then acts of service by your wife may become extremely attractive to you. If she gives you only words of affirmation and doesn't offer to help you with your household responsibilities, you may begin to think, "I'm tired of hearing you say I love you when you never lift the hand to help me." For the time you're working two jobs, it may seem as though acts of service has become your primary love language. However, if your wife's words of affirmation stopped, you quickly realize that it was still your primary love language. If you express the death of a parent or a close friend, an extended hug by your wife may be the most meaningful thing for you at that moment, even if physical touch isn't your primary love language. There's something about being held in the midst of our grief that communicates that we're loved. So while physical touch isn't your primary love language, it could be very meaningful on certain occasions. Number four, excuse me. Does the five love language concept work with children? I was thinking in the beginning that it seems like something that would be for children. Most definitely. Inside every child, there's an emotional love tank. If children feel loved by their parents, they will grow up normally. But if their love tanks are empty, they will grow up with many internal struggles. During the teenage years, they'll likely go looking for love, often in the wrong places. For that reason, it's extremely important that parents learn how to love children effectively. Some time ago, I teamed up with the psychiatrist Ross Campbell to write the five love languages of children. Yeah, I thought he had one. Somebody had said that they had one for children. The five love languages for children. The book is written for parents and is designed to help them discover their child's primary love language. It also discusses how that love language interfaces with the child's anger, the child's learning, and the child's discipline. One of the points we make in the book is that children need to learn how to receive and give love in all five languages. This produces an emotional healthy adult. Thus, parents are encouraged to give heavy doses of the child's primary love language, then sprinkle in other four regularly. When children receive love in all five languages, they will eventually learn how to give love in all five languages. Number five, Do children's love languages change when they get to be teenagers? A parent said, I've read the five love languages of children, and it really helped us in raising our children. However, now our son has become a teenager. We're doing the same things we've always done, but it doesn't seem to be working. I'm wondering if his love language has changed. I don't believe a child's love language changes at age 13. However, you must learn new ways to speak the child's love language. Whatever you've been doing in the past, the teenager considers it childish and wants nothing to do with it. If the teen's love language is physical touch and you've been hugging him and kissing him on the cheek, he may well push away, he may well push you away and say, leave me alone. It doesn't mean that he doesn't need physical touch. It means that he considers those particular touches to be childish. You must now speak physical touch in a more adult dialect, such as an elbow to the side, a fist to the shoulder, or a pat on the back. Or you might wrestle your teen to the floor. These touches will communicate your love to a teenager. And what the worst thing you can do to a teenager, whose love language is physical touch, is to withdraw when the teen says, "Don't touch me." For more on relating to teens, see the five love languages of teenagers. Damn, he got those books. You trying to sell them books? The five love languages of children, the five love languages of teenagers, the five love languages. Period. Maybe I should write a book. The two things: either you do, or either you don't. Number 6. What is the primary love language of your wife is difficult for you? Oh, you already answered that. I didn't grow up in a touching family, and now I've discovered that my wife's love language is physical touch. It's really difficult for me to initiate. The good news is that all five love languages can be learned. It's true that most of us grew up speaking only one or two of these love languages. These will come natural for us and will be relatively easy to speak. The others must be learned, as in all learning situations. Small steps make for big gains. If physical touch is your wife's language and you're not by nature a toucher, begin with small things, such as putting your hand on her shoulder as you pour a cup of coffee to give her. This is the same example we gave before. Or give her a love pat on the shoulder as you walk by. These small touches will begin to break down the barrier. Each time you touch, the next touch will be easier. You can become proficient in speaking the language of physical touch. The same is true with the other languages. If you're not a words of affirmation person and you discover that your wife's language is words of affirmation, make a list of statements that you hear from other people or that you read or hear in the media. Stand in front of the mirror and read the list until you become comfortable hearing yourself saying these words. Then choose one of the statements to say to your wife. Each time you affirm her, it will become easier. Not only will your wife feel good about your changed behavior, but you'll also feel good about yourself because you'll know that you're effectively expressing love to her. Number 7. We're almost there. We have 15. We're on 15. Ah, a lot. We got 16. We got 16. One number 7. We got about nine more to go. Number 7. Are some of the love languages found more among women and others found more among men? I've never done the research to discover if certain love languages are gender slanted. Anecdotal evidence suggests that more men have physical touch and words of affirmation as their love language, and more women have quality time and receiving gifts, which is what I thought. I would have thought that. But I don't know if that's statistically accurate. I prefer to deal with the love language as being gender neutral. I do know that any one of the five love languages can be the primary love language of a man or the primary love language of a woman. The important thing in marriage is that you discover the primary and secondary love language of your spouse and speak them regularly. If you do that, you will create a healthy emotional climate for marital growth. Number 8, how to discover the five love languages. Woo-wee. Excuse me. Excuse me. I'm trying. Let me try the sweet stuff. Maybe this sweet stuff right here give me a boost. Let's see if that sugar help. For years, I have helped couples in the counseling office discover what their spouse desired in order to feel loved. Over time, I began to see a pattern of their responses. I discovered that what makes one person feel loved does not necessarily make another person feel loved. I read over the notes I'd made and asked myself this question. When someone sat in my office and said, I feel like my spouse doesn't love me, what did that person want? The answer fell into five categories. I later called them the five love languages. I started sharing these languages in workshops and study groups. When I did, I saw that the lights come on for couples who suddenly realized why they had been missing each other emotionally. When they discovered spoke each other's primary love language, it radically changed the emotional climate of their marriage. I decided to write a book in which I would share the concept, hoping to influence each other couples whom I would never have an opportunity to meet in person. I was stumbling there. Now that the book has sold over 10 million copies in English and has been translated into 50 languages over the world, my efforts have been more than rewarded. Number 9, do the love languages work in other cultures? Since my academic background is anthropology, this was my question when a Spanish publisher first requested permission to translate and publish the book in Spanish. I initially said I don't know if this concept works in Spanish. I discovered it in an Anglo setting. The publisher said, we've read the book and it works in Spanish. Then came the French edition, the German, the Dutch, and many more. In almost every culture, the book has become a bestseller and a bestseller of the publisher. This leads me to believe that these five fundamental ways of expressing love are universal. However, the dialects in which these languages are spoken will differ from culture to culture. For example, the kinds of touches that are appropriate in one culture may not be appropriate in another. The acts of service that are spoken in one culture may not be spoken in another. But when these cultural adaptations are made, the concept of the five love languages will have a profound impact on the couples in that culture. Number 10, what do you think the five love languages has been? Why do you think the five love languages have been so successful? I believe that our deepest emotional need is the need to feel loved. If we're married, the person we would most like to love us is our spouse. I would agree with that. If anybody's gonna love you, are supposed to love you, it's supposed to be the person you marry. If we're married, the person we would most like to love us is our spouse. If we feel loved by our spouse, the whole world is bright and life is wonderful. I would agree. On the other hand, if we feel rejected and ignored, the world begins to look dark. Most couples get married when they still have the euphoric feeling of being in love. When the euphoric feeling evaporates sometime after the wedding and the couple's differences begin to emerge, they often find themselves in conflict. With no positive plan for resolving conflicts, they resort to speaking harshly to each other. Harsh words create feelings of hurt, disappointment, and anger. Not only do the husband and wife feel unloved, but they also begin to resent each other. When couples read the five love languages, they discover why they lost the romantic feelings of courtship and how emotional love can be rekindled in their relationships. Once they begin speaking each other's love language, they are surprised to see how quickly their emotions turn positive. With a full love tank, they can process their conflicts in a much more positive manner and find solutions that are workable. Excuse me. The rebirth of emotional love creates a positive emotional climate between them, and they learn to work together as a team, encouraging, supporting, and helping each other reach meaningful goals. Once this happens, they want to share the message of the five love languages with all their friends. I believe the success of the five love languages can be attributed to the couples who have read it, learned to speak each other's love languages, and recommended it to their friends. Number 11. What if I speak my wife's love language and she doesn't respond? What if I played the lottery and didn't win? Ooh, wee. That's sweet. Ooh, that's sweet. My wife wouldn't read the book, so I decided to speak her love language and see what would happen. Nothing happened. She didn't even acknowledge that I am doing anything differently. How long am I supposed to continue speaking her love language when there's no response? I know that it can be discouraging when you feel that you're investing in your marriage and receiving nothing in return. There are two possibilities as to why your wife is not responding. First, and most likely, you're speaking the wrong love language. Many husbands assume that their wife's love language is acts of service, so they start tackling projects around the house. They check off items on the household to do list at a furious pace. They are sincerely trying to speak their wife's love language. When she doesn't even acknowledge the efforts, her husband may become discouraged. In reality, her primary love language may be words of affirmation. Because her husband feels no love coming from her, he may be verbally critical of her. His critical words are like daggers in her heart. So she withdraws from him. She suffers in silence while he becomes frustrated that his efforts for improving the marriage are unsuccessful. The problem is not his sincerity. The problem is that he's actually speaking the wrong love language. On the other hand, assuming you are speaking your wife's primary love language, there is another reason why she may not be responding positively. If she is already involved with another romantic relationship, either emotionally or sexually, she will often reason that your efforts have come too late. She may even perceive that your efforts are temporary and insincere, and that you're simply trying to manipulate her to stay in the marriage. Even if your wife isn't involved with someone else. If your relationship has been hostile for a long time, she may still perceive your efforts as being manipulative. In this situation, the temptation is to give up, to stop seeking her love language, to stop speaking, her love language because it is not making any difference. The worst thing you can do is to yield to this temptation. If you give up, it will confirm her conclusion that your efforts were disguised to manipulate her. The best approach you can take is to continue to speak her love language on a regular basis, no matter how she treats you. Set yourself a goal of 6 months, 9 months, or a year. Your attributes should be, no matter how her responses is, I'm going to love her in her love language over the long haul. If she walks away from me, she will walk away from someone who is loving her unconditionally. This attitude will keep you in a positive path even when you feel discouraged. There's nothing more powerful that you can do than to love your wife even when she's not responding positively. Whatever the ultimate response of your wife, you will have the satisfaction of knowing that you've done everything you could to restore your marriage. If your wife eventually chooses to reciprocate your love, you will have demonstrated for yourself the power of unconditional love, and you will reap the benefits of the rebirth of mutual love. Number 12. We've only got a couple more. Can love be reborn after sexual infidelity? Nothing devastates marital intimacy more than sexual unfaithfulness. Sexual intercourse is a bonding experience. It unites two people in the deepest possible manner. Almost all cultures have a public wedding ceremony and a private consummation of the marriage in sexual intercourse. Sex is designed to be the unique expression of our commitment to each other for a lifetime. Man. Mm. Man. That's a Sex is designed to be the unique expression of our commitment to each other for a lifetime. For a lifetime. Forever, ever, forever, ever. When this commitment is broken, it is devastating to the marriage. However, this does not mean that the marriage is destined for divorce. If the offending party is willing to break off the extramarital involvement and do the hard work of rebuilding the marriage, there can be genuine restoration. I'm not too sure about that. But in my own counseling experience, I've seen scores of couples who have experienced healing after sexual infidelity. It involves not only breaking off the extramarital affair, but also discovering what led to the affair in the first place. Success in restoration is a two-pronged approach. First, the offending party must be willing to explore their own personality, beliefs, and lifestyle that led them to the affair. There must be a willingness to change attitudes and behavior patterns. Second, the couple must be willing to take an honest look at the dynamics of their marriage and be open to replacing destructive patterns with positive patterns of integrity and sincerity. Both of these solutions will normally require the help of a professional counselor. Research indicates that the couples who are most likely to survive sexual infidelity are those couples who receive both individual counseling and marriage counseling. Understanding The five love languages and choosing to speak each other's love language can help create an emotional climate in which the hard work of restoring the marriage can be successful. Number 13. What to do when your wife refuses to speak your love language, even though she knows it. We both read the five languages, took the profile, and discussed our primary love languages with each other. That was 2 months ago. My wife knows that my love language is words of affirmation. Yet in 2 months, I have yet to hear her say anything positive. Her love language is acts of service. I've started doing several things she asked me to do around the house. I think she appreciates what I'm doing, but she never tells me. Let's begin to say that we cannot make our spouse speak our love language. Love is a choice. We can request love, but we cannot demand it. We can request love, but we cannot demand it. Having said that, let me suggest some reasons why your wife may not be speaking your love language. She may have grown up in a home where she received few positive words. Her parents were perhaps very critical of her. Thus, she did not have a positive role model when it comes to speaking words of affirmation. Such words may be very difficult for her to verbalize. It will require effort, on her part and patience on your part as she learns to speak a language that's foreign to her. A second reason that she may not be speaking your love language is that she fears that if she gives you words of affirmation for the few changes you've made, you'll become complacent and not go on to make the major changes she's hoping for. It is the mistaken idea that if I reward mediocrity, I will curtail the person's aspirations to do better. That is commonly held myth that is a commonly held myth that keeps some parents from verbally affirming children. Of course, it's untrue. If a person's primary love language is words of affirmation, those words challenge the person to greater levels of accomplishment. The suggestion is that you initiate the love tank game discussed in chapter 9. You ask her, one on a scale of 0 to 10, how full is your love tank? If she answers anything less than 10, you ask, what can I do to fill it? Whatever she says, do it to the best of your ability. No. Whatever she says, that's a no. If you do this once a week for a month, chances are she will start asking you how full your love tank is. And you have begun making requests, and you can begin making requests of her. This is a fun way to teaching her how to speak your love language. Number 14. Oh, come on, two more. 15 and 16. All right. We're almost there. We're almost there. Keep pushing. Ooh, it's on my back. Number 14. Can emotional love return after it's been gone for 30 years? Ooh. Can emotional love return after it's been gone for 30 years? 30 years, you say. We're not enemies. We don't fight. We simply live in the same house like roommates. Allow me to answer this question with a true story. A couple came to me at one of my seminars. The husband said, You've come to thank We've come to thank you for bringing new life to our marriage. We've been married for 30 years, but the last 20 years have been extremely empty. Okay. I had a brain fart. I lost my track. There we go. If you want to know how bad our marriage has been, we haven't taken a vacation together in 20 years. We simply live in the same house, try to be civil, and that's about it. A year ago, I shared my struggle with a friend. He went into his house, came back with your book, The Five Love Languages, and said to me, read this. It will help you. The last thing I wanted to do was read another book, but I did. I went home that night and read the whole book. I finished about 3 a.m., and with every chapter, I realized that we had failed to speak each other's love languages through the years. I gave the book to my wife and asked if she would read it and tell me what she thought about it. 2 weeks later, she said, I read the book. What do you think about it? I asked. I think if we had read that book 30 years ago, our marriage would have been very different, I said to her. That's the same thought I had. Do you think it would make any difference if we tried now? She responded. We don't have anything to lose. We discussed our primary love languages and agreed that we would try to speak each other's love language at least once a week to see what would happen. If anyone had told me that in 2 months I would have love feelings for her again, I would never have believed it, but I did. His wife spoke up and said, if anyone had told me that I would ever have love feelings for him again, I would have said, no way. Too much has happened, she then said. This year, we took our first vacation together in 20 years and had a wonderful time. We drove 400 miles to come to your seminar, enjoyed being with each other. I'm just sad that we wasted so many years of simply living in the same house when we could have had a love relationship. Thank you for your book. Thank you for sharing your story, I said. I find it greatly encouraging. I hope you make the next 20 years so exciting that the last 20 years will be a dim memory. That's what we intend to do, we both said together. Can emotional love be reborn in a marriage after 30 years? Yes, if the two of you are willing to try speaking each other's love language, that is. Number 15, I'm single. How does the love language concept apply to me? Through the years, many single adults have said to me, I know you wrote your original book for married couples. However, I read it and it helped me in all my relationships. Why don't you write a book on the five love languages for singles? And so I did. An entire it's entitled The Five Love Languages for Singles. Like I said, man, he trying to sell them books, boy. In the book, I tried to help single adults apply the love language concepts in all their relationships. I begin by helping them understand why they felt love and did not feel love growing up as a child. One young man who is incarcerated said, thanks for sharing the five love languages. For the first time in my life, I finally understand that my mother loves me. I realize that my love language is physical touch, but my mother never hugged me. In fact, the first hug I ever remember getting from my mother was the day I left for prison. But I realized that she spoke acts of service very strongly. She worked hard to keep us to keep us in food and clothes and to provide a place to live. I know now that she loved me. She simply wasn't speaking my language. But now I understand she really loved me. She really did love me. I also help singles apply the love language concept in their sibling relationships, work relationships, and dating relationships. I have been extremely encouraged by the response of the single adults. I hope that if you're single, you'll discover what others have discovered. Expressing love in a person's primary love language enhances all relationships. Number 16, last one of the book. Last one of the book. How do I speak my spouse's love language if he or she is away from me for a time, e.g., deployment, work, school? I am frequently asked how to apply the love languages in long distance relationships. Physical touch and quality time are particularly challenging in these instances. The simple answer is this: you must be creative and committed to staying connected despite the distance. If your love language is physical touch, then here are a few creative ideas for speaking one another's love language. First, having photographs yourself as a couple may remind you of the enjoyable times together. Having physical items that belong to one another may also remind you of each other. Perhaps a shirt or the cologne or perfume or your significant other may remind you of that person and of enjoyable times together. You also should email and text, write, or etc. About how you enjoy being with one another. You might even try keeping a calendar on which you physically mark off the days until you are able to be together again. This is not a comprehensive list of ideas, but all of these are physical activities and items that will, at least in part, help satisfy your physical love language. As for quality time, the time you spend staying in contact, working to encourage one another, sending each other notes and gifts, etc., is quality time. Of course, it's not the preferred form of quality time, but it is quality time nonetheless. You must learn to view it and appreciate it as such. More specific ways you can express the languages of quality time are to talk often about how you desire to stay close and keep your love alive. Read and reread The Five Love Languages Military Edition. Damn, man, this dude got like damn six five love language spinoffs. Children, children, singles, military edition. Oh well. Hmm. Together while you're apart, or listen to my podcast and discuss these together as a way of nurturing your relationship. This too requires commitment. But if you truly love one another, then you'll find the energy and time to stay connected. Use your situation as an opportunity to practice the other languages as well. Notes and gifts need to be viewed as more than just notes and gifts. They need to be viewed as a physical effort of and words of affirmation meant to express love. In closing, yes, distance is difficult in a relationship, but it does not have to be the end of the relationship. Obviously, the more time you can spend together, the better, and you should strive to do this. However, if you are committed to committed if you are a committed couple and are willing to be creative in how you speak one another's love language, then your relationship can survive and even thrive during your time apart. And that is the end of the book. Well, that's all I'm reading. That is all I'm reading. There are five love languages profiles for couples, for him and for her. So I'm not gonna go into. Excuse me. If y'all want to read it, we'll pick up your book from Mr. Gary Chapman and read the book and um, fill out the profile and do your profile to see what works. See if there's something that you can learn and grow from. But like I said, that was the book. That was The 5 love languages, the secret to love that lasts. Yeah. Well, some things is it's a decent book as far as read wise. It wasn't too long, even though I spent too much time on it. But my boys aren't here now, so while my boys aren't here, we'll pick up on the reading, and I'll be doing them at a. I'll try to figure out a time so I could, keep it at a schedule for this month or for the month of June. For the month of June, we're gonna try to read through at least 2 books in the month of June. The next book on the list is a contrast to the 5 love languages, and it will be a short book. We'll read this one, Why Women Deserve Less by Myron Gaines. That'll be the next book that I start. And we'll read through it and see what they're talking about in this one. And we'll see the contrast from the books for the ladies, to this. Why Women Deserve Less. We'll see the contrast. Maybe there's something that we can sit back and examine and be like, okay, the pros and the cons to both, some, whatever. We'll see what it is. But man, we got a long one today. This was the longest live I've had in a minute. I appreciate everybody that came in and stuck with me. And we finished the book and got it out the way. Now I got some more work to finish today. And we'll see, man. I don't know if I'll start this one today, but we might see. We might see about starting this one today. Why Women Deserve Less by Myron Gaines.